Why do I feel numb when I overthink everything? You tell yourself you're thinking it through. But it's not thinking, not really. It's rehearsing, rewording, rewriting the same moment 100 ways so you never have to feel how it actually landed. You don't panic, you calculate, you don't cry, you narrate, and somehow that's supposed to mean you're okay, but you're not okay. You're just organized. So organized that no one can tell something's wrong, not even you. What if you're not overthinking to solve it? What if you're overthinking because feeling it would break something you don't know how to fix? You ever notice how you flinch at emotion, but nobody sees you do it? Because on the outside, you're thoughtful, calm, measured. But inside, it's like every feeling gets passed through a filter first, analyzed, translated, neutralized. You don't even know when it started. Just that now, every time something hurts. Your first instinct isn't to feel it, it's to figure it out. Why did they say that? What did I do wrong? What does it mean? And by the time you finish thinking through every angle, the feeling itself is gone. Or at least that's what you tell yourself. But the truth is, it's not gone. It's buried. Under the spreadsheet in your mind, under the logic, the reasoning, the constant narration. You don't fall apart. You fraction. Tiny splits, barely noticeable. Until one day, you realize you haven't felt joy in weeks, or sadness, or anything real. Just strategy, just keeping it together. Even your breakdowns are curated, quiet, backspaced before they spill. Because God forbid you say something you can't explain. Or worse, something that makes no sense. The loop doesn't ask permission anymore, it just runs. You get a text, it stings. But before the emotion can breathe, your brain's already halfway through a thesis. They're probably tired. You're overreacting. You always take things too personally. And maybe that's true. But maybe it's not. Maybe you just never learned what to do with feelings that aren't tidy. Here's what no one sees. You don't feel safe unless your emotion comes with a citation. Like, here's why I'm allowed to be hurt. Here's the proof. Here's the backup plan if it gets messy. You don't ask for space. You justify needing it. You don't admit you're tired. You explain your schedule. You don't say you're sad. You point to data, and every time you do, something in you goes quiet. Not broken, not gone. Just quieter than last time. There's this memory you don't talk about. You're 9, maybe 10. Something small happens. A teacher corrects you too harshly. A friend laughs at the wrong moment. It shouldn't sting. But it does, and you feel it well up, that raw, unbearable heat behind your eyes. But then you hear it. That voice. Sometimes it's a parent, sometimes it's your own. Don't be dramatic, think, control yourself. And so you do. You think, you explain, you swallow it down like a fact. And it works. They stop noticing, you stop reacting. But that's the day you learn. Feeling equals exposure. And logic makes it safe again. Since then, you've built a whole identity out of being the one who's okay. You're the fixer, the explainer, the one who makes sense of chaos. But what happens when the chaos is you? What do you do when the thing that needs feeling is something no logic can untangle? Here's the part that still stings. You want connection. You want someone to see past your calm and call it out. To ask, are you actually okay? And mean it. But you've made it so easy to believe the answer is always yes. You've hidden it so well, even you forget what it feels like to tell the truth. And the truth is, you don't finish things. Not because you're lazy, but because you're afraid. Afraid of the moment someone might see it and not understand. Afraid that the closer you get to done, the closer you get to judgment. So you stall. Perfect. Analyze. Spin. Not because you don't care, but because you care too much, and you've trained yourself to pretend you don't. It's not burnout. Not the loud kind anyway. It's erosion. Quiet. Consistent. Perfection in disguise. You function. You smile. You show up. But inside there's this background hum. A soft panic that never leaves. Like you're always mid-thought. Always trying to finish a sentence you started years ago, but can't. And every time you almost stop thinking, something interrupts. Not a sound. Not a person. Just the fear of being felt. You've rehearsed silence so many times, it's become your native language. Not because you want to be unreadable, but because somewhere along the way, it felt safer to be misunderstood than fully seen. You probably know this feeling, even if you've never said it. The way your chest tightens when someone asks, "How are you really?" The way you scan for the most rational answer, not the most honest one. The way you let people think you're distant, when really, you're just afraid of feeling too close to your own heart. And here's the hardest part. You've done everything right. You've been composed, efficient, logical. But it never stops the loop, because logic doesn't cancel out fear. It just quiets it long enough for it to grow teeth. And this is where something quietly broke. You started noticing you couldn't tell the difference between being calm and being numb. You'd say, "I'm fine," and almost believe it, because your tone was even, your heart wasn't racing, your mind had an answer. But there was no pulse behind it. Just silence. Not peace, just the absence of anything real. You'd finish conversations and forget what you said. Not because you weren't paying attention, but because you weren't in them. Just narrating yourself in third person. Just trying to sound like someone who wasn't afraid. And then comes the moment no one sees. You're in the middle of doing something normal, brushing your teeth, writing an email, fixing a broken line of code, and your mind just blanks. Not in a tired way, in a void way, like someone hit mute on your insides, like your own thoughts suddenly stopped trusting you enough to keep going. Right here is where you got used to disappearing. You stopped asking yourself what you felt, because the answer was always, "I don't know." But it wasn't true. You did know. You just didn't want to hear it. Because if you let even one emotion through, you weren't sure it would stop. You didn't become cold. You became precise. Every word, every reaction, filtered, sharpened, sterilized, so no one could misread you, so no one could hurt you. But in doing that, you stopped recognizing yourself too. And the worst part, no one noticed. Because you were still helpful, still smart, still together. Because emotional collapse doesn't always look like falling. Sometimes it looks like exceeding expectations, with no one realizing the cost. What if your composure was just the echo of a shutdown you never came back from? What if you're not disconnected from others, you're just not connected to yourself anymore? What if thinking has become your way of disappearing in plain sight? This is when the silence started to scream, not out loud, just in the way your body forgets how to rest, in the way sleep doesn't feel like sleep anymore, in the way even joy feels suspicious. You start questioning everything, not because you're curious, but because certainty has become dangerous. Because if something is true, you might have to feel something about it. And feelings? Feelings are wild. Feelings are unmanageable. Feelings don't follow your logic. So you turn away. You build arguments where you need understanding. You write essays where you should be saying, "I'm scared." You rationalize everything until nothing feels real. You didn't mean to become this version of yourself. But it worked. Until it didn't. Until the loop started eating itself. Until you couldn't tell whether you were solving something or avoiding it again. Until even your strength started to feel like its own kind of prison. What if no one ever really knew you? Because you never felt safe enough to show them. What if every quiet win you collected was just another way of saying, "I'm still here. I still matter, even if I never show what hurts"? What do you do when feeling becomes the thing that terrifies you more than failure? It didn't fall apart, it faded, and no one noticed but you. And now, every time you try to get back to yourself, there's just static, noise without sound, presence without anchor. You're thinking harder, trying more, but nothing's landing, because you didn't lose your ability to feel. You buried it under logic, and it's still waiting for you. Maybe it wasn't numbness, maybe it was just too much quiet, not outside, inside, where the questions used to echo, where you used to exist. There's a version of you that never made it past the thinking, only circled, only prepared for emotions you never let arrive. You dressed up fear as logic. You wore it well. So well, you forgot it wasn't your skin. You stopped finishing things, not out of failure, but because finishing meant someone might see it. And seeing it meant seeing you, and you never knew how much of you was allowed. You probably won't say this out loud, but sometimes the silence feels safer than being known. And sometimes you miss yourself without knowing what you're missing. What if you were never too emotional? What if you were just never given the language to feel, without defending it? You didn't break down, you just stopped showing up, even to yourself, and no one asked why. So if this still hurts, it means you're still in there, somewhere beneath the logic, somewhere beneath the perfectly phrased avoidance. You're still in there, you always were, You don't have to figure it all out, just don't disappear mid-thought.